Okay. Welcome to the Grief Files. My guest
Hello.
today is Angie Sanders. Angie, thank you for being here.
Thank
Angie
you.
is a multimedia artist who discovered a lot of her own creativity intuitively through an experience of loss. And Angie, I want to hear more about that experience and
Sure.
just open it up for you to maybe you want to begin by telling us a little bit about your kind of experience coming into the arts, and
Okay.
um, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Okay. Um, my journey was I started as a hairdresser, very, very young. I opened a hair salon at 19 years old. I got out of it in my 30s, mid 30s. I had a baby. Sold it to to a girl that brought in as my partner. It's still alive, doing well. In fact, she now has a innovative school
Oh, wow.
in Lake Charles. So, that's I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. And then I started helping my ex husband. We did manufacturing, wholesale. But through that journey, I, the first 9 years of my marriage
Mhm.
was taking care of my mother in law.
Oh, wow.
A year after we got married, I found out, and she found out she had breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
Not knowing her very well, even though we dated a long time, I said, nope, I'm going to bring you. I will take over. That's just me. I'm just kind of a caregiver in that light. Uh, so we started our journey.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I got pregnant, had a baby. She started taking care of him.
Oh.
Um, so she was kind of like my nanny. He was special to her.
Mm.
At 3 years old, she came down with bone cancer. No, her cancer returned. So we went through another round of chemo and radiation. Then the third cancer came back in her bones. And that was like the seventh, eighth year. I
Wow.
brought her into my home, cared for her till the day she died. She was very, very close. After that, through that journey of 8 years, I wanted to have another child.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. They kept telling me, there's no way, your tubes are blocked, blah, blah, blah. Well, I had a procedure done. That's when they told me no. And 6 weeks later, I was pregnant.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, that journey was difficult. But in the meantime, I started painting because I wasn't uh, doing hair as much. So this creative process needed to go somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And toward the end of my pregnancy, I was bedridden with her. And so for 2 months, I didn't do anything. So all I did was Martha Stewart and learning all of these things. I read every single thing I could get my hands on and started painting murals for the school. I kind of got into doing class projects with the children. Uh, and then it became, oh, I wanted to do this Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh for an auction. So I painted this 9 by 12 foot Vincent van Gogh mural. That was my thing,
Oh, wow.
painting big things. So I got into that. And through that, a fine artist was there at the auction, and she came up to me and said, I would love to teach you teach you to paint.
Wow.
So that is how I got into it. And throughout that, I guess I stayed with her probably 3 years, and she taught me, my first journey was oil painting.
Okay.
So she taught me that. And then I started I just started picking up everything I could. I learned how to tile. I learned how to stain glass. My mother is a stained glass artist. She does Tiffany lamps. So I started doing that with her. But I found out that when my mother-in-law died, the sadness, the grief process, because she was really special to me. She was like a mother.
Yeah.
And she was hurting so bad that I found when she died, it was more like a relief for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And because, I was there to change her diapers. I stayed with her every single night that she was in the hospital. I slept by her.
Wow.
And, it was like she could hear me coming down the hall because I wore these DKNY clogs. They were those back in the 90s. And
Yeah.
I'm walking down the hall in the hospital, and I turned the corner because I would go after I worked, and I would go meet her, and we would, I would spend the night or whatever. And I'd turn the corner, and the nurse would say, "Oh, she said you were coming." But because the cancer had gotten into her bones, well, of course it went into her brain. And so, she wasn't really always there, but I
Yeah.
always made sure her nails were painted, her feet, her toes were painted. And I just took care of her like I would want to be cared for. So when she died, I found tremendous relief for her, not for myself, but for her. And then I felt relief for myself. Like, okay, I can finally move on to the next stage of my life.
Yeah.
And because I had basically, my son was young,
Yeah.
and he was very close to his grandmother. I mean, he would get up in the bed and read her a book and jump down and run off. So I
Yeah.
didn't know where he was in the grief process either. And I mean, here's a man of 37 years old, and he's still grieving,
Yeah.
and he doesn't even know it.
Wow.
So like I was telling you, everybody goes through that grief process differently.
Yeah.
The variables are different. You don't know where you were with that journey of that person. You don't know how well did you know them.
Yeah.
They may have, yeah, they were your sister or your brother or your child or your whatever cousin, but it depends on where you are, and through that process after I lost B, which was my mother-in-law, I just always seemed to care for people with cancer. I just, um, my dad, my dad died, let's see, in 2013.
Okay.
And so I cared for him for 3 years. He had cancer. And so, of course, I drove him back and forth wherever he needed to go. But that was just my thing. I wouldn't do anything else, and I changed his trach. He didn't, I have 6 brothers and sisters, but he wanted me.
Yeah.
So, now my mother has, I know I'm going all over the place, but it's kind of going to round up to the same thing. My
Yeah.
mother, through this journey of caring for my father,
Mhm.
I'm like, because she and I had a love-hate relationship,
Yeah.
And I had willpower that she maybe didn't quite, I was the one that pushed instead of followed. But
Yeah.
she was like, okay, Angie, come on,
Yeah.
Come, I've got 6 of y'all and you're the one tugging. So, uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so during that time process, I started realizing my mother has dementia.
Oh, wow.
And so while I'm caring for him, I'm getting his wheelchair out of the truck, getting him into the wheelchair, and my mother's wandering off, and I'm going, no, come I'm going to go over here. No, you're not. So I'm running after her, and he's in the wheelchair. I mean, so you have to find the humor
Yes.
in what you're going through.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you just wake up every day and go, oh my God, I've got to go to the hospital. Oh
Yeah.
my God. You can't get there. I know it's really difficult, and it's really difficult to take care of your parents and to see them in that very vulnerable and undignified position. And so then, after we came through all of this, my mother is now living with my sister, who I've always called my sister the little butterfly, because she just was my mother's butterfly, right? And they just had a special bond. And so now she's been living with my mother for 5 years. We have care for her. We get round the clock, and well, during the day and then on the weekends. But I'm just like, I tell my sister all the time, let me know when you've had it. Everybody has that threshold.
That's right.
And when you can't get past it, don't feel guilty for it. You're human.
Yeah.
Everybody's human in this. That's the part that I think people get to, that grief guilt,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There's that guilt that you overwhelmingly, and I felt that with my mother-in-law, like after feeling this wave of relief, and all of a sudden I felt guilty for feeling that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do. And you
Yeah.
have to learn how to forgive yourself. It's like you feel guilty because you love that person.
Yes.
Okay? Grief
Yes.
is really all about love.
That's right.
It really, really is. And um, you have to remember that.
Yeah. It's the other side of that coin, and our grief is commensurate to the love that we feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really why I don't like having conversations like this, because I'm very, you know, I think everybody grieves forever,
I do too. I do too.
you know, because I've been thinking about, our conversation.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to talk about.
There
There's
is.
just a lot to talk about.
There is.
And everybody has a story. And that's really my main focus right now is everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Everybody's grief is different. Don't discount one person's grief for another
Yeah.
because your journey is different.
That's right.
Everybody's journey is different. And I have a friend, she lost her son when he was 21 years old to a drug overdose. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
And it's still horrible,
Yeah.
and nobody wants that for anybody.
No.
And I can't even imagine, I think about my children and what it took to bring my daughter, especially, into the world.
Yeah.
And I could imagine losing her. And through our journey, mine and her journey, when she was in high school, while I was taking care of my father,
Yeah.
she developed an eating disorder.
Mm.
So when I finished with dealing with my father, I came home because he was in Baton Rouge and we lived in Lake Charles. So I had to bring him to Baton Rouge for treatment and stuff. So I basically lived there during the week, and then I'd come home. And I thought they had it under control. Well, don't think that, because my daughter was dying by the
Oh,
time I got to her. She was in menopause.
wow.
Her brain was getting ready to seize.
Wow.
Her heart was enlarged. Her organs were starting to fail. And that's a desperate, plea. And she was a binger, which is completely different than anorexia or
Yeah.
bulimia. And at the time, nobody treated that. It was horrible. I couldn't find anybody in Charles that had a program. Let's have a program to treat this.
Yes.
So I was bringing her to Austin.
Wow.
Once to twice a week, or we would stay there so she could get with this Dr. Tyson, who is a phenomenal doctor. He had a whole group of people, dietitians, psychologists. I mean, everybody was together on this.
Yeah.
And so we went back and forth. I had to get her well, and I had to get him well.
You were
And
still
you
caring for your
just,
father. Yeah.
yeah, you just do what you got to do. And yes, I fell apart after all of that,
Sure.
but I can't blame anybody. It was just my journey.
That's right.
So, the other day, I have to let go of my guilt for, feeling, I feel guilty, like I gave up on everybody, but I didn't give up. I just got to a point where I
That's
had to save myself. So there's sometimes in grief you have to. I don't know all of the steps of grief, but I do know that those are the main ones that people struggle with.
right.
They really do.
And there's a secondary grief, which you're alluding to. So there's not only the loss of watching a parent, like you say, lose their capacities, lose their dignity. There's the loss of life as you're making these sacrifices in order to be a caretaker. There's the loss when your child is going through a battle of mental illness. It's not the picture we think of when we think of the happy childhood of our children. There's grief in that because that's not the idea we had.
Right.
The grief of what you're giving up to care for that person. But then, Angie, what you're alluding to is this whole other level of secondary grief, which is the grief for one's self, the grief of living through that kind of pain and everything that that meant and everything that that took from you. And that's
Yeah.
so real.
yeah, because you have to stay so strong, and at some point you have to break.
That's right.
So, I mean, whenever you said the trauma, that to me is such trauma.
Yeah.
And uh, so you just have to keep moving, is my point.
Yeah.
And so with what I do now, doing a assistant prop master, is working in the film industry, but we're always creating something, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if the art is just a way of my survival. It keeps
Yeah.
me surviving, okay? Like it moves me to the next step. I'm constantly doing, you know, I found that when I wasn't creating, which I kind of went through a rough patch in the last year or two because the film industry has kind of gone into a dip. We've been very fortunate because I work for someone that has been very well, he's done really great movies. And so he works at a different level. And, but when I'm not working, I have to have something to do, right? Because I'm to an age where I don't have to go out and work to
Hmm.
supplement my income,
Right.
which I'm very lucky and
Yeah.
blessed for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there's only so much Pilates you can do. And for
Well,
me, and that's another thing that I wanted to tell you is, exercise. I know people hate the word exercise because it makes it sound like it's something you have to do to
yeah.
be, normal. Well, it's not.
Yeah.
I look at it as like Jonathan, my partner, is always saying, if I'm sad or something, he's definitely, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
He just knows if I get out and walk in the nature, because I'm a hiker, I love to hike. I love the solitude of
Yeah.
nature, right? And just I think people don't sit in silence long enough. They're afraid of the silence, right? We get all this stimulation constantly. And if you just sit, the answers will
Mm.
come and you can work through those problems. And like lately, my passion here lately, I found pottery. I've always wanted to do it,
Yeah.
right? I've always wanted to get on that wheel. It just looks like, something, but I'm a messy person. I like to get all messy and dirty or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I thought I would love. So I'm doing that right now. But that's the other thing. I guess I don't need the support of people to say, "Oh, let's do this, because it'd be good for you." Um, I just like to learn things. I think that's really the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I may not do it forever, but it's kind of like tiling. I got into backsplashes and I started doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, oops, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Can
There's
can
something
I
in that
stop for a
process.
minute?
There's some
Can I stop
discovery.
and get a Kleenex
Of
for
course.
just a
Of
second?
course.
Okay,
Yeah,
hang on.
take your time.
Let me run. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking there's something, it sounds like, in that discovery process, that learning and that creating, that is somehow meeting your grief where it is, somehow speaking to it. Can you say a
I
little
never
bit
thought
about
about that. I never thought about it that way. I guess it is. I didn't ever think about it like that. I always just thought of it as some way for me to work through my boredom.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
but yeah, you know,
One of the things I want to do with this show is I feel like we speak about grief from the 30,000-foot view. We stay way up here where there's separation and there's distance because we're fearful of getting in there. But I believe that there's so many gifts for us if we can lean in and come into that vulnerable space. So one of the things I'd like to ask you to do is to take us down to a micro level. Think of a Polaroid snapshot. So you've just mentioned a number of different grief experiences, loss experiences you've been through. But if you would just take a moment and consider a time, like just a snapshot of time, and tell us in kind of a textured way, in a sensory way, of what that experience was like. And maybe, for instance, I'll give a little example of one from my own experience. My daughter passed away in 2016, and the rupture for me was so total. I wasn't even a completely together person. But something that surprised me so much about the grief in that moment, I remember sitting in the backyard, and there was these huge pine trees back there. They were like 60 feet tall. And it was shortly after she had passed away, in the immediate aftermath. I don't even know if we had the funeral yet. And I'm sitting there in the backyard, and somehow everything had really slowed down. So it was very suddenly, I'm looking around me and everything looks pixelated. And I see the sunlight is filtering down through the trees. And something came over me where I felt like a warmth and like a blurring of the lines, like there ceased to be a separation between me and everything else. And I was just completely filled with this presence, this like sense of gratitude that I had
Absolutely.
never had before. And I there were many aspects of grief that we could discuss, right? And lots of different feeling states and lots of things that were a surprise. But I did not expect a state of being that was so blissful, that was so quiet, that was so okay. And of course, it didn't remain there. That wasn't the experience all the time, but there were a lot of those moments where I would be moved to tears, not even from sadness, but from gratitude at
But do
being.
you think that that is your daughter reaching out to you and just letting you know that she is okay?
I do. I
And
absolutely.
this is where I am.
Yeah.
Don't worry about me. I am here with you always.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't tell this to a lot of people, but um, I speak to the dead.
Yeah.
So um, they usually come to me in my dreams.
Yep.
It's not a lot, but it's usually with people that I'm super close to. And sometimes it's just complete strangers that I may have met 2 days before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That, like, I was hiking one time and I had a dream about this man that was driving a car. I had the whole visual of him,
Yeah.
and he was telling his son how great he was and driving a certain car. And the next day I said, I think that was your father. And he said, and I said, did he wear? And I, you know, explained to him what his outfit was. And he said, and I said, this was the car. And he said, that was my dad.
Wow.
And that he would say something like that to me.
Yeah.
I know this person, right? So, yes, I truly believe that our loved ones, when they move on, can yes, I've had that exact experience. Like, Dad, I need you, because we were really close. And so there are times I was very close with my grandmother, who committed suicide when I was 18 years old. And I would go visit her.
Yeah.
I stayed with them when I was kids all the time. And of course, I felt like an only child over there, right? And my dad was an only child, so they loved having me over there. But anyway, I was going to her house, turned on her street. Something told me, don't go now, go
Mm.
later. Went back to work. They called me and they said, your grandmother's dead. But she had been telling me that, Mama's not going to be here. You're going to be sad. Say that. So I kept thinking, is she going to commit suicide? She had committed suicide. And so, for whatever reason, they didn't want me to find her, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she came to me in a dream. We talked. She told me she was okay, and she was in this room I had never seen before. Cut to in my 30s, because Devin was, okay, I was like 35, 36.
Yeah.
My friend buys a house, big mansion, old house. We go up into the attic, and I stop short. And I said, "Oh my God, this is the room my grandmother was in."
Oh, wow.
And I kid you not, the way the light was coming in, it was the room. So,
Wow.
yes, I do believe that things like that happen.
I
I
do.
know they do.
Yeah.
Your loved ones want you to know they're okay.
Yeah.
They do, and they don't want you to be sad. They want you to remember them. And I tell this to my girlfriend all the time because she is terribly sad. And I don't, nobody knows how to get you over that hump. There's going to be days where you may not want to get out of bed,
That's right. Yeah.
and it's okay.
Yeah.
I tell her it's okay, but you can't stay there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You got to move on. So if it's a pottery class to get your ass up, I say do it. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, I
Yeah.
promised myself I wasn't going to use my trucker mouth, but I
Oh,
think I came out cursing.
it's okay.
But I think art is just a beautiful way to express yourself, and nobody even judges what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they don't care if you made the ugliest thing; it's still beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you just get out there and do something that it's that little thing that picks at you and keeps picking at you. You come across it. It's kind of like the numbers that everybody talks about. Oh, those numbers show up. They mean everything. Okay, well, they can and all that. And I believe in all that stuff. I think it's a wonderful thing. There's things that show up all the time, and you can connect them to all kind of things. But the little thing that keeps picking at you in the back, we all have that.
That's
That's
right.
the thing you need to do. That's the thing you need to address,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. And that's your intuition calling to you and inviting you into the imagination, which is where, by the way, our lives are existing and playing out. I read some really interesting research that's being done in this space around bereavement and what helps us to engage. And one of the things they said, and this really struck me, is they said what people have to remember is that even in our interactions with the living, you and I right now having this conversation, we're having this conversation in an imaginal realm. And what they're saying is it is not so different as people think to relate to someone who's already passed on. That is also in the imaginal realm, and it shares a very similar kind of frequency and a very similar kind of meaning. And so they're encouraging actually that you continue to reach out and talk to people that you
Absolutely.
and stay
That's,
connected with
yeah,
them.
absolutely. And that's why I encourage people to sit in silence.
Yeah.
Ab- You know, take the earpods, put the phone down.
Mm.
That is when you're going to make your connections.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
your brain, your mind is still. I mean, I could sit and stare at a wall for 3 hours and get more out of that than reading, an encyclopedia or whatever. But it's just like you don't realize how much you can connect to when you're not thinking about. And it's really hard not to think about things.
Yeah, it is. It
Now,
really
only if I could do that at night when I lay down in the bed, because I'm an insomniac. But,
is.
you know, it is. It's different. It you don't need as many people around. I don't think and that's one thing with grief. I find you can call it a maturity. I know what it is. You find that you don't need as much. Do you
Mm.
find that
Yeah.
the material things, like when I lost my mother-in-law, it's kind of like things weren't so important,
Yeah.
especially when you are caring for someone and you watch them go through this death process. Things are not important. You
Yeah.
know, other things become so much more important, like learning something, reading about something. Get out there and try it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going, get your hands in there and just do something, even if it's learning psychologically about something or doing some social experiments. I love to do social experiments. I sit and observe people all the time. And it's like, especially like at work, because the film industry is crazy as can be.
Yeah.
And there's lots of little social experiences
Yeah.
that you can have. So, you got to look at it from different ways and just find your path, and I
Yeah.
don't know, I think some people are so busy looking for it.
Sure.
Sometimes it's just sitting right there. It's that little thing that's gnawing at you,
In the
right?
quiet. You got to get quiet in order to hear it. No, I hear you with that. After my daughter passed, I remember having a reframe about what I called a bad day. You know, I said to myself, a bad day was the day that my daughter died. And, a day when I lose my car keys and I'm running late and everything's not working out. And even if it's a really serious seeming problem in life, it's not a bad day. There's a real reframe in that.
Yeah, it just is what it is, right?
Mm.
Although I wish I could take that lesson myself, and change my way of thinking, because I usually kind of go off. But that's a good analogy to have, right? It's just like it's not really that bad, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Because that was bad.
That's right.
You could go back there any time that you want, I bet,
Yeah.
if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And you know what? You have that right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's your grief and it's your sadness. And I just think that everybody just grieves differently. I
Yeah.
just think they do.
Yeah.
And there's no time frame on it. And I think that that's the problem of today. Everybody thinks there should be A, B, C, because
Yeah.
that's what we see all the time, right?
But grief is nonlinear. It's very, very nonlinear. And
Yeah.
it does not follow a progression. You can seemingly feel better in your grief and then feel worse and be surprised at when it comes, maybe many, many years later. I certainly go through this experience. Sometimes I don't understand why. Sometimes there's no obvious, say, trigger, anniversary or something, but sometimes my daughter's death becomes paralyzing again for a while, even after all of these years. And then there's other times when I feel like I'm more companionable with the grief, but it's like you said, it doesn't go away. Angie, what would you say based on your experience? I feel like because we don't engage that much about grief and because we don't talk about it openly and with closeness, there's so much we don't know. And I know for many people who might be loving or supporting someone who's going through grief, and people think, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to not say. I don't know what to do. What would you say based on your breadth? You've had a lot of experience of grief and loss. What do you wish that people understood about it? And do you have advice in terms of things to say, not to say to someone who's grieving?
Um, I think if that person comes up in your head, like if you have a friend, I have an extremely close friend. Her husband committed suicide in 2019,
Mhm,
and she's still grieving today. And
mhm.
I'm like, you may never stop grieving,
That's right.
but I will pick the phone up and I will call her and say, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
How are you today?
Yeah.
Just don't forget that these people may be grieving one day or the other. They may be sad. Just
Yeah.
because it's been 10 years
Yeah.
doesn't mean they should be, whoop, yeah, we're done. I
Right.
still grieve my grandmother. I lost her at 18.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about what you said is it may not be an anniversary or things like that, but I read something really interesting about how days or dates can trigger you without you even knowing it. It's kind of a subconscious thing, right? I mean,
It
something happened
is.
on that day and it was traumatic to you, but you didn't jot it down and say that was a traumatic thing that happened to me, right? Um, and there are days that I'm just really upset about something or really, something really just there's no reason for me to be irritated or upset. And I'll stop and think, that's when that happened.
Yeah. The body.
Oh, yeah, that's when my dad, fell, or that's when we had to go back in the hospital, or that's when B found out she had bone cancer, or, it's,
Yeah.
there's always some day that you can think of, or maybe that was the day you and your daughter had an argument,
Yeah.
you know, just a silly argument, but it meant something to you because you remember it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, I told somebody the other day, even though my mom is alive, because they were complaining about their mother because she's elderly. And I said, well, you know what? I wish I could call my mother and talk to her on the phone, but I can't.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't even know who I am. She says, "Oh, you're sweet. You don't sound like my Angie. You don't look like my Angie. But do you know my Angie?"
Wow.
It's like you can't get upset about that, right?
That's where
So I
that
just tell the
you have to.
yeah, yeah. I'm just like, but I will be there because that's just a dementia, you know. So I am grieving her right now as though she's gone.
Yeah.
So you can grieve someone while they're alive too.
Absolutely.
You can grieve that. And so when you see that for a person, say I'm sorry. It's okay to say I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That I'm sorry that you lost that person. I think it's better to say something than nothing.
Yeah.
I think it's better to offer your condolences. I think it's better to walk right up to that person and say, "Hey, I heard what happened. Is there anything I can do for you?" But don't say it unless you mean it.
That's
You
right.
know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Don't don't offer it unless you're going to be there for that person. Or, say, "Would you like to have coffee one day?"
Yeah.
You know? How are you?
To
That
invite
that
someone into
means
normalcy. I remember this going into social settings after my daughter passed away, and oh my God, it was we dreaded it so much. My husband and I would walk into the room, and you could feel everyone's panic, and the room would get very quiet, and people would
like,
start
what
to
are we going to say?
artificially normal. People weren't sure if they should mention it, right? I think there's a fear sometimes people have that they're going to remind you of the loss. And the thing I would say is, we never forget. We never, ever forget. You're never at risk of reminding somebody of their loss. I think it's just scary. But I agree with you. There were a few people who seemed to really somehow intuitively understand that. The people who would come right up to me
Give
and
them a hug.
daughter's name and acknowledge that she has died or invite me into doing some normal activity with them. But people would just
Absolutely.
do these like pitying, wide-eyed looks, and then they would try to they just it was so awkward. It was so
The
awkward.
awkwardness. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just continue on with your same, like there's no reason to be awkward with someone that has lost someone.
yeah,
Allow them. They just want to come back in
that's right.
to their fold
That's right.
as they were before. They don't want to be known as, "Oh, that's the couple that lost their daughter."
That's right.
Really?
That's right.
Make it worse for me. Why don't you? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
We- I mean, I
They're
always,
scared. They're scared to
uh,
do and say the wrong thing. They're scared to trigger you, that kind of thing. But I think this is a huge takeaway for anyone listening to this is that, the triggering thing is, oh my God, we're never going to be able to interact in a normal way. I was so afraid that I would never get to hear my daughter's name come out of anyone's mouth because they were so scared to utter it, you know?
well, and the other thing is, um, it's okay to tell people about your story too.
Yeah.
You just have to know the time and the place.
Yeah.
I know some people lead as that's their identity.
Mm,
They want to tell everyone about and they're still, and I'm like, okay, well, that makes people uncomfortable at some point, like, "Oh, I lost. Oh, I lost." And I'm like, really? You
mm,
know?
mm.
and and it's okay, but some people want to have that information out there and don't mind going into a room full of people and expressing themselves. Like that might be the way she got over it,
Right.
right?
Right.
But then there's some people that they don't know what to do. They're just kind of like, "Oh my God." But I just kind of walk right in and just say, "Hey, how are you? Give me a hug.
Yeah.
Is there anything I
Yeah.
can do? Do you need anything? Do you want to talk?" I always and the other thing is send them a card.
Yeah.
Like just reach out to them and just say, "Hey, I am thinking about you."
Yeah.
That means a lot to people who have lost someone. It really does because you may be having a horrible day that day,
Yes.
and just knowing that somebody is thinking about you and cares,
Mm,
right? Just
Mhm.
knowing somebody really cares that you lost your daughter or having a bad day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I think, showing people compassion and having empathy for
Yeah.
what they've gone through. And this day and age, I just find that everybody is so focused on our own
Yeah.
set of rules, our own life. We just need to get back to that compassion.
And I
And
love
I
what
think
you
that's
said,
the,
that to say something is better than to say nothing. And I would agree with you based on my experience of grief and the many, many grieving families I've spoken with in the course of my work. I would say there's a pretty broad consensus about that. So I think that's a great insight.
and your group and stuff, that's a safe group for people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I started going to a Bible study
Hmm.
after my mother-in-law died. I felt so safe within that group of women. It was a really safe space.
It's important.
And go places where you feel safe.
Yeah.
I think that the safe space is a really good thing where you don't feel judged. And
Yeah.
I guess that's why the art is one thing, because you can kind of get in. It's kind of like golf. It's your own little, you're
Yeah.
playing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have to worry about everybody else, or you're not on show or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
just think it's important to find something that you can pick up or do without other people around, so that you can get into that, like you said, meditative space or prayerful, prayerful state, whatever it is for that person.
Yeah.
I think there's a greater thing out there that we can all look towards,
Yeah.
and death doesn't have to mean doom and gloom,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's okay to feel doom and gloom.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
really is, because we all do feel it. It's a natural human emotion.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing, is I think um, humanity kind of makes us feel guilty for feeling gloomy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think you're right. You're right. And
And
there needs to be space. It's like Rumi's The Guest House. I don't know if you're familiar with that poem. It's really beautiful. And it talks about, you know, letting whatever emotional guests arrive at your door, invite them in, give them a seat at the table, and let them be there. Whether
yeah,
it's a
just
rage or
feel them.
sadness, let it
But
come,
yeah,
take its time. Yeah.
but also you also have to know when to get out of it.
Yeah.
You can wallow too long
Yeah.
in that, and that's not a good thing either.
Yeah.
Like, because I know I can do that. I can feel, because like some days I feel such disparagement going on in New Orleans,
Yeah.
right? I look around and I'm just like, oh my God, but that's just the thing. You got to just move on.
Yeah.
Find that thing that makes you happy, and do it. And if it's just take a walk,
Yeah.
taking a walk will do wonders for people. They don't, I tell my friend, get out of that bed. She'll say, my husband gets upset because I'm in bed when he comes home from work. And I'm like, so you know what? When you hear the car pull up, jump out of that bed. You
Yeah.
go in the kitchen and you stand in the thing, or hop on the sofa like you've been there. I mean,
Yeah.
make yourself do things, and it may change
Yeah.
the way you think about things.
That's right. Angie, this
And I
has been
mean, just
so good.
talking with you is really helped me. I mean, I didn't mean to cry, but that's maybe why I don't like to talk about it so much,
This
because
this is a safe space for crying. Crying it's one of the ways that we release that energy, and it needs release, and it's part of why it's important to discuss. So this is a free space. You're neither the first nor the last to cry. It's
good.
okay. Okay. Um,
Well, it's really, I enjoy speaking with you.
Thank
It's
you for
really fun
this.
having this conversation.
I feel like we could go volumes. I think we're going to have to bring you back on the show and do volume 2. But before I wrap us up, Angie, I wanted to see, is there a way that our listeners could get in contact with you if they wanted to engage and discuss further some of what we've talked about on the show today? Like maybe your Instagram presence or email address or some way like that?
You could, my email address, you could give them my email, and just, put in the subject line your name,
Yeah.
so that I know where it's coming
Fun.
from.
Yeah.
And that would be great. Yeah.
Just real quick, and we'll wrap up on this note. Thank you for being here. If you will just shout out that email now so that it's there on
Okay.
the stream, and then a listener who might want to shoot out an email and just let them, let you know that they heard this talk, and maybe they just want to comment or maybe they want to connect. That way they have a way to reach you.
Okay. It's Angie, ANGIET 70605 at yahoo.com.
Awesome.
Okay.
Again, Angie Sanders, thank you for being here. Love this conversation.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you.